Nancy Graves was a preeminent American artist. She was based in New York City, traveled a great deal, exhibited internationally, but was very much integrated into the Soho art scene from the late 1960s, 70s, and 1980s. Nancy Graves was born in 1939 in Massachusetts in Pittsfield. And Pittsfield also has the beautiful Berkshire Museum. The Berkshire Museum is one that integrates its fine arts collection with its natural history collection. So in her mind, and this is I think one of the key ideas in her work, is that she does not separate science and art. What does it mean to make something that looks realistic and have it be in a museum of natural history or in a museum of science, and then have something that's very realistic yet have it be in an art museum? What kind of questions does that raise about, well, realism, representing reality? She was developing a career and searching for her own independent way of thinking after having had a fairly traditional MFA training in painting. She was the youngest artist ever and only the 5th woman ever to have a show at the Whitney. And that show really positioned her and in a way launched her entire career. She did an installation in a fairly small room of 3 larger than life-size camels. Now these camels, when you first walk in, and even when you see them now, they look almost like taxidermy. And then if you look at all closely, you'll see that they are definitely handmade. They're made of all these little patches of fur that have all been assembled and kind of sewn one on top of the other. The camels are in rather interesting and rather bizarre kind of poses. And she also forced you, because the room was so small, to get very close to these camels. You know, just really in such contrast to pop art, and also in contrast to kind of minimalism and these prefabricated, sort of machine fabricated, very sleek objects that were kind of the norm, or that were kind of considered to be cutting edge at that time. From the actual form of the furry, you know, almost taxidermied looking camel, she moved to the skeleton, a skeleton that was supported. And then from that skeleton, well, a dead skeleton actually doesn't hold together, to the scatter pieces. And then so she investigated the notion of the floor and the idea of the scattering and not having a pedestal or a base. She also investigated the idea of the base. And then her work just became increasingly abstract. So she would focus only on a specific camel bone, for example, or a certain hanging assemblage. So she's never out there, you know, sketching a camel in the desert, for example, or at the zoo. Her subsequent work is always growing out of the work that she herself had made previously, and from techniques and processes from other media, so that these various media are informing each other as she's developing her work in the course of her entire career. Nancy Graves was a very serious artist and a very thoughtful, as well as in a way intellectual artist. She was very interested in the ideas and the explorations that art could offer, that art could reveal and make one think about aspects of the world, aspects of psychology that had hitherto not been seen. So that art in a way could open people's eyes to looking way back into prehistory, to the Pleistocene era, and that art could also allow people to look way forward into the future, which is what she called outer space. And this kind of limitless potential, I think, is what she was exploring in a lot of her work. This idea of just being able to look, that science offered us ways of exploring the world that in a way were an extension to what artists were doing already in terms of what they were exploring, looking very deeply and very thoughtfully at something in a completely new way.